So this is a tutorial for the CW Aspen quality doors. Now, this is a particular size here for this closet door opening, but they'll come in different sizes. It's mass produced, not very expensive. I think it was like 40 to 60 bucks for the set. Not very expensive. So they're metal framework with, just a little thin board type stuff. As you can see, the build precision on that isn't really a major deal. They'll come with all the hardware you need. For this particular door, I had to trim the mounting hardware narrow a little bit, even though most of the stuff in this house is built relatively standard. It took a little trimming on the hardware. What that will mean when we close the doors is they just overlap a little bit when they're closed. But even at the normal settings, they overlap a little bit when they're closed. So unpack your stuff. Check your door opening. Sometimes these door openings are tapered a little bit. This one appears to me to actually be a little bit narrower at the bottom than at the top. And then I'm going to be double and triple checking the door height because we've added carpet here. And we need to make sure that's going to work. So I trimmed this before turning the camera on. The way this track stuff works, it's actually kind of a reverse deal here. It'll come with these little wooden pieces. You need to trim those down so that they're slightly narrower than the track. And then that's basically how that goes. Now, on this type of a door opening, sometimes, like in this circumstance, I've got door trim here. But when we look at the shape of that wall, we know that it comes down to the side. The other thing on the old closet doors, they have this little front thing to cover up the sliding hardware. That's normal. What I'm going to be doing here is we put that wood in. Hopefully I trim that narrow enough. Yep, I got to kind of press that hard. I wanted it to be up against that. I got to check the back of this with a straight edge, but basically I'm using the rear. Whoops, sorry about that. I'm using the rear of this as my alignment. So I'm going to line everything up on the rear. Sorry about that. Of that. Kind of guesstimate where I came in over here, but I'll be taking a measurement from the top to that to make sure that we're consistent. And then when we install this, again, we're looking for consistency. What I will do is line up the back side of this with the back side of the wall. That will give me plenty of clearance to clear these little wood nailers that somebody put in so they could attach this up here to cover up hardware. Even though on this particular installation it has the metal to cover that up. We're going to leave that wood in place because I think it looks better and it's more easily painted than the metal. If your stuff looks like this, you're wrong. The instructions that came with this weren't entirely clear about the spacing when you're having to improvise the positioning. They showed this thing positioned toward the front. They wanted this thing positioned back a little bit, but it wasn't really clear to me how far back in relation to the front and top, but now I realize it does need to go back. So if you're using a back alignment, then that ends up off the edge, right? Because we can't move this forward anymore because the way these nailer blocks, or if we didn't move it forward, it would only be a very short distance. So the lower actually needs to offset a little bit to the rear in comparison to the upper. And that's basically the theme on this. So in test fitting one of the doors, I can see I need to go back about 3/4 of an inch or something like that. Now in the instructions, they were basically, I think, saying something about, locate back. And it says, well, pencil this, pencil that, and they show a tape measure, but it doesn't really make it entirely clear. But here, it's a 1/2 inch with one of the setups and 1.5 inches with the other. To clarify here, I knew there was supposedly a little bit of an offset, but I thought that was going to naturally work if I lined up the back instead of the front. But it turns out that on some of these doors you have to offset a 1/2 inch back, others you have to go 1.5 inches back. Well, since this is the Aspen style door, we looked this up, and it's right in the middle, right? So I track offset A or B. Isn't entirely clear to me which of these two, but when I look at the way this ended up here, kind of looks to me like the 1.5" offset, not the 1/2 inch offset. But I got to double and triple check things, undo these screws, and then screw it in with more of an offset. A lot of this is a hand fit and making sure that these ones, sometimes these aren't 100% level. They were never meant to be 100% level. When we're working back and forth on this, we want the door to slide all the way over and have a relatively consistent crack. What that boils down to is these are the wheels that it rides on. So by working this with the power screwdriver, we can adjust the height on the door. It's kind of hard to tell in the darkness of the back of this thing, but you can kind of see down there where those are. Oops, sorry about that. And so you can adjust the height, which will adjust the angle that the door sits at. In addition to getting the offset right on this, we also set a tilt angle on the door, whether it tilts this way or this way, so it's relatively consistent when it's up against one wall or the other. So for example, if these walls are slightly off plumb, the door can be adjusted to compensate for that. But generally speaking, one door more than the other might be adjusted to compensate for that. Or here, I see a little bit of a gap here, more of a gap there, and it contacts in the middle. That's because the wall's slightly bowed. Probably the wood that was made out of had warped at some point, and they, kind of drywalled around it, made it look good. So that's pretty much the way that goes. Now, you got to pop these little caps on the tops. Basically, we're going to have that on there. We place it up underneath. There's no real track up here. What these do is they just kind of pop into that and ride on a, it's kind of a polymer, a self-lubricating polymer. What really makes this glide is the fact you've got a little track down here with a slotted wheel when this door is right side up. And that's how these things ride. Of course, you would adjust those by working these screws, which will slide these assemblies up and down when this is in the installed position, right side up. You'll also notice that for the installation of these little plastic pieces, there's these which may have ginked up a little bit. These are probably made a mile a minute in the factory. You just pop these on, and that's how that goes. It's pretty much only one way they're going to fit. But what happened is, see, that was a little sloppy in the manufacturing process, no big deal. We pop that on until it clicks, and then this is the surface the upper rides on. The lower will, of course, ride on those tracks. Now, when this comes packaged from the store, those are retracted all the way. So once we flip this around and place it up in there, we place it, I don't know if I can probably do this one-handed, it's relatively lightweight. No, I'm going to set it down. Hold up. Set that down to get it started. So we get this in that track, it'll kind of pop into that. And as I straighten out the door, you'll notice it's not quite tall enough to contact the rails underneath until I do this, which is kind of tricky one-handed, as I hold the camera. And then we'll open it slightly and let's see. Yeah, there we go. Get that up on the track, and then what I will do is kind of move this to the middle, and then we'll get around here with the screw gun. We'll reach around back, use the screw gun to lower those wheels by contacting it up and down, and get those adjusted in place. There you have it, all done. And so what we'll do is kind of go over this in the future on a couple of things, but That's pretty much it. So you can see these doors are, I don't think it's a door, I think it's a wall. It's a little bulged in the center, so we have a gap high and a gap low. That's kind of normal. And then we've been working on other stuff. Be careful on handling it because it can get dirt on there.